Hello and welcome to 5-Minute Math. Today we are looking at the 8th grade concept of using the Pythagorean Theorem, specifically how we can use it to solve problems, and we will do it in 5 minutes or less. So we are looking a little bit strange on this video because we need the use of this calculator, because once we get up into 8th grade and we start solving for the Pythagorean Theorem, numbers get pretty strange and you definitely need a calculator. So I'm going to bring that on screen for us. So here's our Pythagorean theorem. It works with right triangles. And so we know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That means that if you square both of your legs and add them together, it will equal the square of the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always going to be the c, and it's always going to be the diagonal across from your 90-degree angle. So how can we use that to solve problems? Well, you'll get something like this. And so we'll start with something basic, right? And it might say, all right, so you get yourself a right triangle here. I'm not going to worry too much about units. Let's say this is 12.4, and then this is going to be 26.3. Question is what is that missing side? Well, we know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace that with these terms. So we know that 12.4 squared plus, we're missing that b squared, always have to remember the squared, equal that 26.3 squared. Now you see why we need a calculator. So let's see what 12.4 squared is. All right, that is 153.76. I'm going to write that down here. 153.76 plus my b squared. That's going to equal, let's see, 26.3 squared, 691.69. Now, what I need to do is two things left. I need to isolate that variable, so I need to subtract, right, 153.76 from both sides. That's going to leave that b squared by itself. So let's minus 153.76. What's that going to leave me? That's going to leave me with 537.93. Now, we're not done yet. That's what b squared equals. 537.93, which means now I've got to find the square root of this. I got to take the square root of both sides. The square root of b squared, that's just going to equal b. The square root of 537.93, oof. Let's round that to the nearest hundredths place. That's going to be about 23.19 or 19 hundredths. So that's how we could find the missing length right there. Sometimes in a problem it might be a rectangle. It might give you a rectangle. And they might say one side length is 7.2 and another side length is 5.4. And they might want to know what's the diagonal. Well, even though they're starting with a rectangle, if you diagonal it, guess what you're making? You're making a right triangle. You just have to kind of ignore this other part. So we can do that same thing, right? A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And so let's see what that is. So first we need to take our 7.2. We need to square it. That's 51.84. You know what? We can go ahead and add 5.4 and square that. And both of those together actually make 81. All right, so we've got 7.2 squared plus 5.4 squared equals 81. And we know that those two squared need to equal our c squared, right? So that's our hypotenuse. So we take the square root of both, and it's actually going to make a nice even 9. So that's very interesting that that one actually works out that way. But that is actually how you would use it, is you would square both of those, add them together, and then take the square root of that sum, and in this case it is 9. In this first case right here, it's 23.19. That's how we use the Pythagorean theorem to solve problems.